Welcome to Surviving Show Business, the podcast that takes you inside entertainment to help you survive and thrive with your host, Aaron Seals. Surviving Show Business is sponsored by NYCastings.com, the place where stars are born. Actors, models, dancers, and singers can join and get casting notices sent to your phone every day. Hello! Today's special guest is Meredith Marciano, and she is a casting director in New York City, and she has worked on projects like Sex and the City, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Glee, American Psycho, I Am Legend, 27 Dresses, Sherlock Holmes, Rocky V, and what else?
Well, a lot of things going back many years, and it's a variety of principal casting and background casting. So most of the things you named were background casting, but those tend to be the big jobs. And the principal casting is a little bit more independent film, commercials, a lot now for the web, beauty, industrials, sales, promos, things like that, and the occasional foreign film, a variety of things. Every day is a different job.
What are some of your favorite projects that you've been on?
Well, I would say one of my favorite directors that I've worked with a couple of times was Sidney Lumet. And he was just a wonderful man and creative, and he got right in there with me, even though maybe there were one or two principals I had to cast. It was basically the background, but he wanted to have interviews with everybody. He was very specific on the types he wanted and wanted my suggestions and input on who we should hire for some very specific featured background roles. And he was just very sweet to everybody that came in. Everyone left absolutely adoring him. He was just a wonderful person and a great director.
Cool. How did you get started in casting? What drew you to casting?
That was not in the original plan. I knew I wanted to be in the film business somehow. I did get interested in film when I was in high school, and film and photography, and I was just absolutely adamant about going to film school somewhere at a time when there were only a few film schools, and mostly were men in the departments. So I absolutely said, I'm going to be a director, by the time I'm 23, and which at that time most people weren't, except for Orson Welles. But that was my dream. What I really did was I got really enamored when I was in high school with old Hollywood, and I really got into watching old movies from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, and I would go to all the revival theaters in Boston and watch old movies, and nobody wanted to go with me. I would go alone and just fell in love with all the old stars and directors, and thinking, I want to go to Hollywood because, I knew it wasn't going to be just like that, but that's where I wanted to be because I was in love with that at the time, teenage obsessions. So I said, I want to go to California to be there, to be in Hollywood, because why go anywhere else? At that time, that's where the business was. So I eventually got into USC Film School and moved out there. And that was just the original plan, was to be in the film business somehow. The reality set in a little bit later after graduation, when you didn't just walk into a job in film production, especially at that time, unless you either knew someone or had some money behind you, or you were walking around with your own script that you were dead set on making. I didn't have a script. So I just, one thing led to another, and I ended up leaving LA after about 7 years because I said, I came to LA to be in the film business, and I'm not in the film business, so I'm going to go back east. I'm from Boston, and see if anything happens there. I did have a friend whose father owned a commercial production company in Boston, and they did give me some PA work. And so I actually started working more in production as soon as I moved back to Boston in the early 80s. And one thing led to another. A woman came from New York to produce an Aerosmith music video, and I worked on it.
Which video?
You know what? I'd have to see it I remember it shot in one of the concert halls in Boston, a live sequence, and he's wearing like a hot pink jumpsuit.
Okay.
And I actually did know the name, and now I'm blanking on it. But whatever music video shot in 1983, that's it, in Boston.
Okay.
So anyway, she said, oh, if you ever want to come to New York, let me know. And I got laid off a couple months later from that production company I was working with in Boston, which was it was a location scouting facility. And I just called her and said, I'll come to New York if you think you'd have a work for me. And she said, yeah, come. And so I came, with nothing, just planned to sleep on my cousin's couch and work on this really low budget movie, which was one of Alec Baldwin's first films. And
Which one?
It was called Forever Lulu at the time. It's now, I believe, it's a different name. It was released with a different name. Debbie Harry was in it. A lot of downtown New York actors were in it. Hannah Shigula, who was a big star of the Fassbinder films in Germany, she came to be the star of the film. And she just said, the producer said, well, come and we'll find somewhere for you to work in the office, and I can pay you $250 a week. And I thought it was absolutely just a godsend. I thought I was rich. I was so happy to get a job, and thought that was a lot of money. And I was sleeping on my cousin's couch on the Upper West Side and having to get to the office in Soho, which was like a dark, kind of dangerous area at the time. We kept having our cars broken into, our production vehicles would get broken into every night. It was very dark and quiet on those side streets in Soho at that time, and you were told not to walk around at night. And I just had to be there from like 7 a.m. till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And I had a great time. I mean, I was the assistant coordinator, and ended up, because it was a very low budget film and everybody in a very small crew, we were in somebody's loft. I did a lot of jobs in that first job, and I learned a lot just on that first job. I mean, I had to do many things that I found out later weren't the role of the office coordinator. Like I was doing finding all the rented cars and doing all the catering and, arranging the catering. And I just remember I would sometimes get to the office and stand at my desk from the minute I got there till late in the afternoon. Like I didn't even have a second to sit down. I just stood there on ringing telephones, answering the phones, dealing with one catastrophe after another, because, these low budget movies never had any money to have good equipment or anything. So everything was always breaking. Yeah. So anyway, it was a really great learning experience, and I'd be told to like, oh, here, go pick up so-and-so. They live in Brooklyn, one of the cast members. I didn't know where I was, how to go anywhere. They would just say, get on this street and turn here and turn there, and then you'll be there, And I found my way around a lot because I had to drive around places and walk around places and do errands and all sorts of things. So it was an interesting few months. And what I always say is that the way it kind of went from there is that there were people, because we had a lot of interns. I don't even know what school. Maybe they were from NYU. I don't remember. But because I was the first person they kind of met who was doing some casting. Oh, so actually I wasn't supposed to do casting on that film, but as one of the other many hats I was told to wear was to do the background casting. And, not knowing anything about it, the casting director just told me what to do. And we had an open call where at that time people were walking up the 6 flights of stairs in this old factory loft. There were no rules, It's not like the SAG rep came by and scolded us or anything like that. So I learned how to do it on that film. And because these interns, I was the only one they knew that knew anything about it. When they went on to their next job, which a lot of them went on to producing music videos and things like that, they called me to help them find their models and the girl in the video and stuff like that. So it really kind of mushroomed after that first movie, because many people at that time then called me for their next job. And so I just kind of did a variety of projects after that as I learned more about what I was doing and, the ins and outs of the union and stuff like that.
Okay, so it just snowballed. You got into it for production. you got thrown into casting, and then it just snowballed from there.
Exactly. And once I started doing the casting, that's where I stayed. I did not really pursue being a coordinator, on any other movies. Maybe one or two other movies I pursued, whatever, because I was just taking whatever jobs I could get. But I kept walking around promoting myself, went to a lot of parties, and just said to people that I was casting. So eventually people started hiring me.
So what was the next big film that you got on?
I have to think for a second. I would say, well, I met somebody, I'm probably going to Atlantic City. I got in with a group of people that were going to Atlantic City or Brigantine, New Jersey, to do this Penn and Teller movie. And that was a good step. I actually had taken a side job working for a producer for like a year in Times Square. But I would be in her office, and during my lunch breaks, I walked around the building. It was one of those old buildings in Times Square. It's gone now, where various filmmakers had offices. I think I walked into Jonathan Demme's office, would just leave my resume during my lunch breaks. She knew that I pretty much wanted to go into casting. But one day I somehow got this job on the Penn and Teller movie. And I said, I'm leaving to go work in this movie. And she said, oh, no, don't go. If you stay with me, you could be a producer. Not many people make it in casting. Matt Dillon's manager discovered him while casting Little Darlings, and he made a career out of it. But not many other people make a career out of it. She was really trying to dissuade me from leaving her office because she liked me. But I liked working for her, too. But I just really wanted to go into casting, I guess. So, yeah, I got that movie in Atlantic City, and that was pretty big for me, and it was big, and they gave me a couple of assistants. I had to find these local people to help me, taught them what I knew, and they gave me a condo and a car, and
wow.
Again, I thought it was amazing. And it was probably $500 a week, and I thought it was just astounding.
How do you get a condo and a car?
Well, because they had to bring everybody there. So it was just for the length of the movie.
Okay.
But they had to bring, when you go on a road movie with a New York crew, they have to put everybody up. And at that time, it was right off season. So they had like a whole few buildings of empty condos, that people weren't in because it wasn't the season to be there at the beach. So I got to know Atlantic City and Brigantine very well. And then that same crew went back on the other shoulder end of the summer to do a Diane Keaton movie. So they brought back me and a lot of the other people who worked on the Penn and Teller movie to go back there. And then I really knew everybody by that time. And I helped the casting director in casting a few of the local roles because I already knew everybody. We had 2 long days of open calls and interviews there. And so those were the stepping stones, I would say. And then from there, because I had that kind of Atlantic City, Philadelphia SAG office connection, I got the Rocky V job in Philadelphia the next year, where I went to Philadelphia to do that. And that was very big.
Yeah.
In terms of, what we had to do and fill a stadium and stuff like that. So I learned how to, we did hire someone to work on promotions, like get a motorcycle to raffle off, because they didn't want to pay, of course, the majority of the people who came to the stadium. So anyway, those were, I think, kind of the first big 3 bigger films that got me used to working background casting on big things. Although, even in that movie, Rocky V, John Avildsen, we did have to cast a few day players too. And so, we'd be casting hundreds of background and then be told to find like the local news anchor for a day player role. And we'd call the real local news anchors and have them meet us somewhere and put them on tape and bring it over to the set. And so you ended up doing a lot of different types of casting on the bigger films.
Wow. Impressive. What about American Psycho? One of my favorite movies.
Well, that also was just something that came here for like a day. I do not have much of a recollection of that film because it was one of those films that only came for a very short time. If it was a day or two, I don't even remember. I also have to say, what year was that? What year did it come out? 90, was it 96 or?
American Psycho?
Yeah.
Let me look.
there's also a period of time, I think it was mid-90s. I think it was like shooting next to the apartment building I was briefly living in. That's my biggest recollection, is that either shot in the building I was living in down by Liberty Street, or it's shot in the alley. Many things shot in the alley next to my building, the old Dinosaur Sinclair oil building at Liberty Street. Had a very nice alley that was used on a Sheryl Crow video that I cast. And I seem to remember American Psycho being there also one night.
IMDb says it came out in the year 2000.
Oh, okay. Well, so probably it shot in 99, which is when I left that building. I just kind of remember they were shooting in that alley. But yeah, brief. I don't remember much.
What do you like about casting? Like, why did you stay in that spot?
Well, first of all, of course, I got good at what I do, so it's something that can be challenging. I've worked on many films over the years that presented many challenges in casting, but I really love when I do principal casting. I mean, that's what makes it fun, because I've had some great audition days. You know, it's the joy of having people that are really good come in and audition, and just being with them face to face, or usually I'd be even the reader with them, and seeing the scripts come to life.
Now, I think a lot of people think casting is very mysterious. Could you maybe explain the entire process of how does casting begin?
Sure.
From the script?
It's not. In different films work in different ways. Different directors have different ideas of how they want to do casting. But usually the script is broken down by character, and I'm given the character breakdown and, you know, all the logistics, the dates it could shoot, how much it's going to pay, whether it's union or non-union, whatever. And it gets submitted to the services that agents and managers and actors see to be able to submit for work. Now, it was, I think, a little bit more mysterious before the internet, because it was a little bit more of a, that was the gatekeeper, you know, was something like the services. Because, yes, I would meet people in classes and seminars, and I would bring them into audition as well, as much as I would put them out on breakdown. Some things I would also just call people in directly, of course, people that I knew, people that I'd met in classes or seminars or remembered from other auditions. But it wasn't as easily accessible since the internet. Before that, it was, I think, harder, you know, for a lot of actors to get auditions, because you really needed, it was good to have a manager or an agent who could get through the door. There were also less people at the time, that's for sure. So,
but what happens, let's say you bring in these people that you think are appropriate for the roles, and then the directors and the producers,
they're the ones that choose.
All these guys start looking at it, and they've got their opinions, and
yes,
they fight over it.
Everybody has their opinions. Definitely, yeah. So they get everything. Whether I have an audition all day, and I used to send a tape or a DVD, or the director would be there in person and just taking notes. Usually there was some kind of powwow as to who the person would be. I mean, it would range between who the director wanted. Sometimes the producers might weigh in, or they do weigh in, of course, but have a different idea. It could be, of course, there's a chemistry between some of the actors together. They may bring in a couple of the favorites to work together and see who works the best together. Money issues could come up. Travel issues could come up. Time logistics come up. So-and-so, they really want so-and-so, but that person's in a Broadway show and they only have Wednesdays. They can't work Wednesdays because of the matinee. I mean, certain things can come up that could interfere with the schedule too much, that it makes it not an easy thing to hire them. There might have commitments to other films. So I am usually not the one that makes any final decision. Of course, it's the director's film. So they just get the choices. And I am usually the one to make the choices to begin with. Nowadays, again, with the internet, the crew can see a lot more easily. Before, if I got a bag of mail and piles of photos as submissions, I was the one making the choices. Nobody wanted to come over and look at all the pictures. I wasn't told to bring 1,000 photos to an office and let other people decide.
They didn't want to see the choices?
Not the thousands or the hundreds. But now, because I can just send them a link or the login info or something to see all the choices, some directors have wanted to see all the choices. They want to go through the thousands of submissions and they want to choose who comes in. And I might add some in, of course, that I know are good that they didn't pick because maybe they were going by looks. And I know that looks can be very deceiving. So yeah, that's why every case is different. I've had directors want to be in the room at every audition. I've had directors that only want to have a callback. You know, everybody works differently. But usually from the first step, I go through all of the submissions and cull it down to, you know, hundreds or whatever, however many people could come in for an audition, or now with self-tapes, you know, how many self-tapes you want to look at. I mean, usually the directors don't want to look at more than like 100, you know. It used to be, 10 per role, but now it's so much easier for people to do it on their own, you know.
If a person's submitting to you, like what kind of things can they do to stand out, do you think?
Well, first to be
in the non-celebrity realm, of
right.
course.
No, absolutely. Just first of all, I think being right for the role, and I don't want to say that, there are just sometimes people submit that are absolutely not what the breakdown wanted, what the director wants, and they just submit because they just want me to see their picture. Like I'm just going to remember them for something else someday, which is possibly true, but it's also a little bit annoying when you're going through hundreds and hundreds of pictures. Usually I say that if I've met you at an audition or something else, or if you just booked something, if you have some little inside information, that's good to add a note. I auditioned for you at this time, or I booked this job recently. I mean, just some little note that will call attention to itself. And other than that, it's really just always been about your picture, because that's what's selling you at first glance. And, pictures can be a turnoff if they look really fake. Too much makeup that you're not seeing the real person, or too stylized. I've always liked some artsy headshots, but you want to kind of have an idea of really what the person is like. And definitely something in the eyes to me. I look at a lot of eyes.
What about video? How big of a help is a reel going to be, or some kind of footage that they've...
It's very helpful. It's very helpful. And a lot of people do have reels now attached to their various casting portfolios. I mean, of course, you may have a website, but in terms of submitting on various casting websites that are posted, what we're looking for, it definitely is helpful to have a video attached of something that you've done. Sometimes some people just have one thing, that's presentable, and even that is just fine. It's just good to have something. I do look at them a lot.
And is there a difference between film casting, TV casting, commercial casting? Or is it all kind of the same thing?
It's all kind of the same thing to begin with. It's a commercial or something, of course, that doesn't have lines, but it's still, let's say it's a commercial or a promo thing for a company. Like I do a lot of real estate, promo videos, beauty shots. Those don't have any speaking, but they're considered principals. And some commercials, of course, don't have speaking, but they're considered principals. So that's going to be more about a look first. But they always want to see, improv ability, depending on how much of them is really going to be seen. If it's just a beauty thing and they're not really doing much more than standing or walking through the shot or whatever, then it's definitely a look. Because the director's going to have a very specific idea of what kind of looks they want to promote their work. For anything else, commercials, it's a lot of improv ability. And I had an audition once for like a Lotrimin commercial, and all the people, the director was just insistent that everybody have improv experience, the Pit, Groundlings, every Second City, and high levels of classes they went through, not just 101. And I brought in all the ones that had the most extensive improv and comedic training background, and we had these really funny auditions because they were asked to do quite a bit in the audition with their timing and their improv. And of course, when they shot the commercial and it aired, it's only like 10 seconds, and the guy is not doing anything as funny as what we did in the audition, But the director wanted to be able to see that they could do that.
Cool. What about before the audition? How would you tell a person to prepare for them coming in to audition for you? What would be some good tips?
Well, definitely, depending on what the product is or what the film is, definitely appreciate having read the sides. If there are sides, that's always been a little bit of a pet peeve, is when people come in. This is when we had more live auditions. These days, with self-tapes, the actor can work on it all they want and to film themselves doing it many times and just keep the one that they like the best. But when they would come in and not be prepared, that was annoying. I didn't get the sides. My agent didn't send them to me. Just not really having any information. And that I used to, of course, blame the agents a little bit for, because the agent just kind of in a hurry probably gave them the appointment time and said go and didn't tell them what it is, when it shoots. People would come in, and the director might be sitting there sometimes, and they come in like, when does it shoot again? Oh, I'm not available that day. And the director kind of would look at me, why is this person here if they're not even available? And I'm like, I told, it went out what the shoot dates were, where it was going to shoot. The agent confirmed them. So those were kind of annoying things. But certainly knowing your sides at least a little bit, and not having, you don't have to be off book on the first audition. But at least knowing what it is a little bit, so you have some ideas of what you're going to do and some choices that you've made and how you're going to do the lines. And even if you ask questions, or if you think the director might want to see it a different way, be ready to do it a different way, it's a little different now having live auditions and doing self-tapes, because a lot of information is conveyed in the instructions for the self-tape. So just doing it shows usually that you've read the instructions and that you know when it shoots and where, and what's involved in the character breakdown.
Got it. If you were to get started in acting today, what advice would you give yourself or anybody that wanted to get started?
Well, certainly to at least take some kind of entry-level class to see. Are you saying someone who actually says, I am an actor, I want to get started, or I'm interested in acting, I want to get started?
Let's say they're interested, they don't know what to do, but they want to do it.
Okay, so I actually just had this conversation with a 21-year-old guy who, actually he had done extra work once or twice in his life because he knew somebody. But he didn't consider himself an actor. He'd never taken an acting class, and now he says that he would like to try it out. There's something inside of him that he feels is in there and that he could do. So I gave him a few names of some various acting classes around the city and said I wouldn't invest in a big 2-year program or anything like that to start out. Why don't you take a basic acting class on a Saturday just to get a feel for it and see if you like it. And how you feel about it, and then take it from there. And watch a lot of movies and go to theater and just see a lot of great acting. Watch some classic films and try to go to as much theater as you can, even just off Broadway, and just see if you think that these are things that you could do.
Okay, so let's say they went to the acting class, they loved it. What do they do? What do they do next?
I would think take another class a little bit more advanced and then try to meet some. I wouldn't say to try to meet agents and managers and things right off the bat, because you have to have a little bit behind you, I think, and certainly some work behind you.
You'd have to get a headshot at some point.
Yes, you have to get a headshot. I would just take a few more classes first, because I think there's loving something, and then there's the reality of the situation. You know, are you going to quit your full-time job to do this? Are you ready to move to New York to do this, or LA?
Do you think somebody has to move to one of these towns to do it?
Yes and no. I don't think there are some cities that there's more work in if they're got some tax incentive, that there's a lot of production. You know, you hear there's production. I've worked in some states where suddenly there's a ton of shooting, but then it goes away. If it ends, then suddenly there's nothing shooting. So, and I know that there's some work, you know, in other states, but I don't know that you're really going to work a lot. So it depends how much you really want to commit to it. I find a lot of people I've met in classes have said, I moved here and I'm auditioning every day and going to classes every day and auditioning every day, and I have a flexible job that people know I want to do this, so I can change my hours. You know, that's kind of the big commitment.
Okay, so move to New York or LA.
Well, probably. I mean, I know, of course, there's work in other cities, but that's what people say. That's where they are. There's a lot of people here.
And, like, there's a lot of different ways to make money in show business. There's commercials, there's voiceovers, print. Like, what kinds of things do you think they could do to really get started?
There are. And some people kind of land with a client, get a job that leads to many other things. If you're doing voiceovers for a certain company, or if you're doing print for a certain company. But I notice that it's really just about getting onto these casting websites and just submitting yourself for every single job that you feel that you're really right for. Because you can now. You know, you didn't used to be able to, and now you can. So I think the first thing is just signing up with every single casting website and being able to submit for jobs. Because everyone I meet, they're telling me about all these films that they got in, or a commercial or a web thing. And I say, oh, how'd you get that? Oh, I got it through, you know, the ad in such and such a this website or that website. So the ability to be able to submit yourself for everything is really nice.
I think that's a really good starting point, because you can't really get an agent these days unless you've done stuff. So you start through a casting service, book a bunch of jobs, and then you can present yourself to an agent saying, hey, I booked all this great work by myself.
Exactly. Hopefully book great jobs. There's a lot of competition out there. I could tell, because every time I put something online, I get thousands of submissions. Used to get, 100 or so in the mail, but online there's thousands. And also people are submitting from other places. They're submitting from different states in the hopes that you just want to hire them and you're going to pay for them to come here, Oh, and I was going to say one other thing. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We were talking about submitting yourself for everything you can. Oh, doing your own work, of course. So many people tell me about this web series they're doing, or this, that, or the other thing, but it's something that they've just done themselves because you can shoot it with your phone, if you need to. You don't need the money that you used to need to make product.
Yeah, if you could write your own stuff and be the lead, that would be quite a bit better than, just taking smaller roles.
Right, and a lot of people are doing that, and a lot of people are doing it. And yeah, you have to promote it, and you have to get people to see it, but at least you have it. You have it, and you can put it on your reel, too.
I would say that's the best experience you could ever get, because you're doing everything, and you get to be the lead if you want.
Exactly.
You say the words that you want, you present yourself the way you want. And also, a social media presence is valuable these days.
Social media is very valuable. As we see now, companies are looking not even for celebrity actors, but Instagram famous people,
You see that.
influencers.
You see that in the breakdowns every day. We're looking for people with social media followings.
Yeah, because they figure you're going to post it on your social media, and it's just getting free advertising for them.
Yeah, and you can get big bucks that way. So that's
Definitely.
I would say if a person wanted to get started today, start by growing your
Instagram, of course. Yes, I'm sure there'll be something, whatever the next thing is, and then staying on top of it too. Suddenly somebody who has. There was one kid who used to say to me, like, "Oh, I've got 60,000 followers on Twitter." I'm like, why? I mean, tweeting anything, it's just people buy followers and they just follow everybody and hope for a follow back. But now I don't even know if that matters as much as having, 500,000 on Instagram. There's always like the next thing. So what's it going to be after Instagram? I don't know. But it'll be something.
And like, what are some like don't do's that you come across a lot? How do people shoot themselves in the foot?
Oh, well, yeah. Don't show up for an audition. Say you're going to self-tape and not do it. I mean, or just do it wacky. I mean, I had something I just asked for a self-tape for, and it just made no sense. I didn't feel like I could send it to the director the way the person did it and what else they put on their self-tape. Kind of stick to the instructions and present yourself the best way forward that you think that will nab you that job or catch the director's eye. And don't veer too much off it, because it's not like people have just infinite time to go with your zaniness of some other monologue or something that you decided to put on with the self-tape. Sure, it could be cut, you could stop watching, but don't do it. Just stick to what you were given, and just read the directions. And definitely in the days of when because I still do have live. Just had a live audition for a lottery commercial a couple of weeks ago, because it was very physical, and the director and the producers and the creatives all wanted to see the people's physical body language and how they acted together. And when people don't show up, and don't call. It's one thing to not show up and text or email or call like, "Oh, I had an emergency, I had to leave town, I'm so sorry, something came up, or I booked another job," and whatever. An excuse is fine. Not showing up and not calling, texting, or emailing to say why you didn't show up is not cool. That leaves I have a very good memory. I kind of remember all of those people going back years. So you don't show up and you don't call, and then you keep submitting for other jobs for the same, casting. And it's like, why are you submitting to me knowing that you totally blew me off last time?
Right. Totally makes you look bad to your director if you've got a bunch of no-shows at the auditions.
Exactly. And luckily, again, there used to be more no-shows. Now people are pretty good about showing up. I don't know. I think this is kind of more of a paper trail now. It's more, everything's a little bit more official now with the internet than it used to be. Everything was always just a phone call. And, people could have all sorts of excuses like, "Oh, I didn't write that down." And, you had nothing in writing to prove anything. So people used to not show up all the time. And I'm even talking about, especially with background casting. Oh my God. If you had to book 100 people, you would automatically think you should book 130, because you would automatically think 30 people wouldn't show up. And now you can book 100 and everyone will show up.
Wow, that's hard to believe.
Yeah. No, it was just a little flakier before, and just no paper trail. And now people want a good reputation. That's different now, especially with the various casting websites that everyone's getting these jobs on. Nobody wants to be known as the person who doesn't show up. Everyone's very proud of their impeccable records of always being on time, always bringing the right wardrobe, always being, 100% committed, not being on their phone the whole time. And now, ADs will text me from set, "Don't ever put this person on again. They've been on their phone the entire time. We can't get them to get off their phone. They're not paying attention. Or this one's been sleeping and holding all day." They're not they're not working. They're getting paid to work. You're getting paid to work. Don't flake off, because the ADs are noticing it, the PAs are noticing it, and you don't want to be the one with that reputation like that, because then it'll get back to everybody else, and you won't. You may not get other jobs.
Got it. What about unions? You got non-union, you got SAG-AFTRA. Some people go FICOR.
Yes.
When do you think is the right time to join a union?
Well, definitely, if you're being offered a lot of union work, you've got to join. There's so much non-union work. I've always done both union and non-union work from the beginning. So I don't have a preference. I know there's some mighty fine talent out there who are non-union and amazing talent who are union. But, the unions are great, and the unions will help you earn a decent living, and, you're going to get fair wages and other fair compensation that a lot of non-union don't pay. But there's also some great work that's done that's not a union crew. They're not signatory, and they do. I've worked on non-union shoots that have paid the actors the same rate as a union rate. They just didn't want to become signatory, the particular production company. So if you are going out for a lot of SAG jobs and you are being, of course you have to at some point join, even if you didn't want to, if you're offered a SAG booking.
What about FICOR?
Well, a lot of people are doing that now, and it doesn't matter to me. Certainly on my non-union jobs, if someone who's FICOR submits, I know that they're FICOR, and that it's fine for them to take the job. There were some very good people who got a lot of non-union work, 10 years ago I'm talking, who got a lot of non-union work and then got cast in something union and joined the union, and then found that maybe they didn't get as much work as they did. Because it used to be, if you were really good, especially of a certain age, there's a lot of great non-union people, in their 20s, just starting out. As you got older and older, if you kept getting work, you eventually did become union. So if somebody wasn't union and they were in their 40s or 50s and really great, they were getting a lot of work, non-union. And then if they suddenly had to join for some other job, they may find they're now not such a big fish in a little pond. They're more of the little fish in the big pond, and they're not getting as much work. So then I've seen them then go FICOR so they could go back to getting their non-union work. I certainly don't mind it. I don't hold it against anybody. I know a lot of actors didn't want to lose their non-union opportunities. So it used to be kind of a secret. I remember the first time someone told me about it, like 20 years ago. It was like, shh, SAG doesn't tell people that they can do this. But now I think it's much more. I don't think necessarily that SAG promotes it, but it's not a secret anymore.
Very interesting. So what are you doing these days? What's like your latest project?
Well, I have I have a movie coming in from Finland for just a day in a couple of weeks, and I just had a bunch of people self-tape for the director, and I know they were just looking at the self-tapes, and maybe by tonight they'll decide who they want for the 3 leads for that. I have a web thingy. I never know what to call them. They're kind of industrials, but, not for broadcast. Could end up on the internet, but it's for the particular company of something that the director is also looking at a lot of pictures for that. That's kind of the way it is now. So you get a job and you get all these pictures and you just kind of wait to hear if they want to see people in person or if they want people to self-tape or not, or if they just want me to choose. And I have a little non-union. So I had these 2 projects that are basically non-union, but they wanted a kind of a celebrity to be the lead, so they get SAG ultra low budget contracts. So some of the leads can be union. They don't get paid very much, but it is a SAG contract. And so I did cast John O'Hurley for the lead in one of them, and so he's going to be flown out from LA for that in about a month or 2. And then there were some other roles, local roles that could be cast by New York actors that we're filling now to work with him. So that's one. So that was one that I got him for. So that was one that I did the whole thing for. And then I just got onto one today or Friday where the lead is an actor who I believe wrote the script and maybe he's going to direct it. I'm not sure. I haven't even gotten all the information yet. But he is SAG, of course. And so a couple of leads I've been asked to get are a SAG ultra low budget contract. And then there'll be, I think, a lot of background. So I'm working on that today to look for the other couple of leads. And what else? What else?
What would you say was like the highlight of your career? What would have been your favorite projects? Sex and the City was big, of course.
Well, you know, I don't know if I hate to say it or, you know, working on it was great at the time. It was a hard job. There were fun times. There were hard times. It was a long job. But I'm not beginning to see it now. You know, it really changed. It was the beginning of the changes in New York in terms of, you know, people starting to come here. So whereas I'm someone who likes it a little bit more the way it used to be, you know, the East Village was, you know, a funky, artsy place. And then suddenly after Sex and the City, it was just kind of run over by packs of girls walking around with their high heels and short skirts. And everyone just seemed to come to New York to go shopping or to eat or go to the bars. It wasn't about coming to be, you know, artistic or anti or an alternative person or an outsider. It's become a lot more homogenized, and I feel like I worked on the show that really kind of kicked that off. So, and I'm noticing now that it's the 20-year anniversary, like all these articles are coming out. Like one woman just wrote an article that I saw online about how it ruined her life, Sex and the City, because all these women moved to New York thinking this was going to be their life. They were going to find their own Mr. Big, and they were going to be able to have a great apartment, but barely make any money, but still buy designer shoes and all this, and that it didn't work out that way, and they were leaving New York. You know, so I don't know. There's a lot of like that kind of talk right now about how the show ruined their life, or you know, I don't know. And I feel now like, oh, I was a part of this show that kind of changed, you know, the types of people that came to New York. And it became more about coming here to eat and shop as opposed to coming here to be artistic. You know, all the music clubs started shutting down and things like that. Of course, there's new galleries and things, but...
What are your favorite shows now? What do you like to watch?
I love, what's it called? What's the big show? This Is Us. I love This Is Us. I got hooked onto that a little late in the game. I actually worked on it one day. They came to New York to shoot in the first season one night, and I just had to get the background and stand-ins and a couple of photo doubles, and I didn't know anything about the show. And everyone said, oh, you got to watch the show. You got to see it from the beginning, though. It's amazing. And so I watched it from the beginning and fell in love with it. But I love Broad City. I think those girls are hysterical. And I believe that started from their own web show, right?
I don't know.
I think it did. I think they had their own web series. And, you know, I actually don't watch a ton of TV because I have a lot of guys in my house and the TV's always on sports. So I've gotten to know a lot more about sports over the last 25 years.
How about films? What are your recent films that you like?
I did like A Quiet Place, and I did like Tully. I'm not a big blockbuster person. I have no desire to see any of these Marvel or comic book movies. It's just not me. I took my son last night to see 2001: A Space Odyssey because it's playing for the 50th anniversary in 70 millimeter. That's my kind of thing. That's what I like. I like intelligent, beautiful, thought-provoking, long, slow movies. And you know what? And he enjoyed it too. I mean, he's not 15, but he's 20. But I've always taken him to see old movies. I took my kids to watch old movies as much as I could when they were little. You know, I took them to see The Exorcist, you know, like 10 years ago. Whenever anything would play on a big screen, I took them to see Metropolis, Fred Astaire movie, Taxi Driver, anything that I don't like watching movies on a little. I do not have a huge TV, so I do not like watching movies on little TVs. I absolutely oppose the idea of watching them on your phone, even on your computer. I hate it. I love the communal experience. I love sitting in an old movie theater in the dark with a lot of other people and experiencing something that is makes everybody feel something. And yeah, sure, the occasional funny bromance or comedy, the things my kids really do like, I'll go to occasionally also. But, if I had the time, it'd be mostly probably foreign films and art films and things like that. It's just the way I've always been.
Cool. All right. That's a lot of great stuff there.
So not all the movies and TV shows that I've worked on. And some of them I have seen and some have been very good. My favorite show, you know what? I always forget about this. And probably no one has seen it who's listening to this. But I worked on a TV show like 8 years ago, I think, for a cable channel. I can't remember. I don't think it was HBO, but I can't remember what it was. Called Rubicon. It was a series and it did not get picked up. And it was wonderful. And it was because it was like an old TV show or an old movie. It was kind of comparable to something like The Parallax View. Slow, complicated, long shots, with things going on, not quick cutting, not effects, just an intelligent story that was very complicated and we could barely even keep up with, and great acting. And it was a shame that it wasn't renewed, and a shame that I can't find it anywhere. It's not like it. No one put it out on DVD or anything. So I would love to watch them all again. And I'm mad I didn't just videotape them because I would have had them. But that was a great show. That was one of my favorite jobs. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think that'll do it for us. How can people? How can actors get a hold of you?
Well, I'm pretty findable.
What's your website?
Well, the website actually is not very updated. I did it at a time when people were just starting to make websites. It is my company name, Amerifilmcasting.com. I have not really updated it in a long time because I tend not to use it now with Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, so they can find you on Facebook.
Yeah. I mean, I think my website had a mailing list, which I did send out mass mailings on sometimes when I was looking for certain characters, but I haven't kept it up. And just because I haven't, and because I'm much more active on the social media. So on Facebook, it's Amerifilm Casting and Media LLC. On Twitter, it's Amerifilm, and I do post for things on there as well. I just posted for a few things on there recently. If you look, and then sometimes on the Twitter, I'll reference back to it, to tell people on Twitter that I posted there if they are interested in seeing the postings. So those are the two things that are the most kept up to date. I try to, almost every day post something there about, certainly when I need something, I have, yeah.
Cool. All right. Again, this is Meredith Jacobson Marciano.
Well, yes, in Italian it's Marciano, but nobody says it that way. So everyone says Marciano, but technically if you're in Italy, it would be Marciano.
Marciano. And this is Aaron Seals with Surviving Show Business. Bye-bye. Well, that's all, folks. Surviving Show Business is sponsored by NYCastings.com, the place where stars are born. Actors, models, dancers, and singers can join and get casting notices sent to your phone every day.